Was it really a Hamilton mistake? Or Ferrari sabotaged it unintentionally in Belgium? The fall of heptacampion in Spa was not just a spin and a bad calculation. It was the reflection of a much deeper problem than anyone in Maranello wants to admit. Lewis Hamilton reached Spa-Francorchamps in the middle of a cloud of expectations, pressure, and hope. He was one of the circuits that had most marked him throughout his career, a route that demands mastery, courage, and precision. And although this time he did not do it with Mercedes, but dressed in red Ferrari, the aura that surrounded him was the same, that of a multiple world champion willing to challenge the limits. However, what should be a claim ended up becoming one of the darkest episodes of his recent trajectory. It all started on Friday in the classification for the sprint race. The conditions were ideal: stable climate, dry track, and a clear window to attack the stopwatch. But it was precisely at the crucial moment during his last round launched when the unthinkable happened. In the final chicane, that technical and treacherous combination that punishes the smallest error, Hamilton lost control of the car. The SF25 left the rear suddenly, causing the car to turn on itself in an unexpected spin that sent it directly to the escape zone, losing all opportunity to improve its time. It was a visible, dramatic, and forceful mistake. But beyond the image, what really caught the attention was the reaction of the pilot himself. Hamilton, with more than 300 large prizes disputed, said without hesitation that it was the first time in his life that experienced such an abrupt control loss at that point in the circuit. He did not say it as an excuse but as an alarm signal. These types of statements are not common in it. They are encrypted messages that reveal much more than they appear. That same day, while the media exploited the incident with sensationalist holders, Ferrari's technical environment immersed himself in an exhaustive review of the data. Was there a brake failure? A configuration error? An anomaly in the gearbox? Sky Sports, with his high-level technical analysts such as Anthony Davidson and Martin Brundle, captured strange sounds in Hamilton's gate reductions. Metal noises that should not be there. Some speculated with a possible failure in the power unit or in the calibration of the braking system. But after hours of analysis, Ferrari issued an official verdict. There was no mechanical failure. According to the team, the car was in normal conditions. So why did the spinning happen? Why Hamilton, one of the best pilots of all time, made such an unusual mistake just when he needed a good result? The question was floating in the air without a conclusive answer. The only clear event was that the British would start from position 18 in the sprint race on Saturday. A sports disaster that pushed him on the emotional edge. Not only because of the result, but for the public humiliation that supposes to stay out in a Q1 when you represent Ferrari and you have the palm tree that he holds. The superficial explanation of Hamilton's spring could have been limited to a pilot error. But in Formula One, especially at this level, details are everything. And after the initial bewilderment, Hamilton himself showed that what happened was not only his responsibility. Ferrari had introduced a new component in his car that same weekend, and it was the first time that Lewis used it in competition. That detail, apparently technical and minor, had huge implications. It was not a simple new piece. It was the same as Charles Leclerc had released in Montreal, and with which he had also crashed. That coincidence no longer seemed a coincidence. Hamilton was clear and direct. We have a new component in the car that Charles had in Montreal. Charles crashed with him. And I had the same experience in my first attempt with him yesterday. The connection was direct and disturbing. The same erratic behavior, the same critical moment of braking, the same devastating result. In a category where the error margins are millimeter, introducing an element with a negative history without having been completely understood or adjusted was a risky play. And the consequence was immediate. The most disturbing of this situation is the way in which the new component affected the balance of the car. Hamilton described a sense of control under normal conditions, until by applying a little more pressure in the brake, everything changed. The brakes felt quite well until you apply a little more pressure and rear tires are blocked. This behavior pattern suggests a non-linear response of the braking system, an abrupt transition from control to total adhesion loss. And that, in Spa, is a ruling of error. Here we are not talking about a total failure such as a broken brake or a loss of hydraulic pressure. No, it is more subtle, more difficult to diagnose. An internal calibration problem, how the new component is integrated into the rest of the brake system, how it affects the braking distribution, how it responds to thermal conditions and wear. And that kind of problem is even more dangerous because it is hidden under the surface and gives a false sense of security until it is too late. And the most revealing thing is that this is not an isolated case. The problems with the SF25 brakes have been a constant since the season began. Hamilton himself has defined them as a lottery. He literally said, "We throw the dice. You put a brake game in work. You put another and it doesn't work." That statement summarizes the internal chaos state with which Ferrari has dealt since the beginning of the campaign. Even Leclerc, who has been in the team for longer and is supposedly more adapted to the car, has had to adjust his style to deal with these unpredictable breaks. During the Austrian GP, both pilots were forced to make lift and coast almost the entire race. Not to save fuel, not by strategy, but to cool the brakes because the system did not endure the normal race pace. That structural fragility, that lack of consistency, is undermining the confidence of the pilots and limiting the real potential of the car. And the most ironic of all is that Ferrari had arrived in Belgium with a supposedly revolutionary update package. A series of improvements that promised to close the gap with McLaren and Red Bull. But instead of pushing forward, these improvements exposed further SF25 cracks. Because in Formula One, it is not just about evolving. It's about doing it without compromising what already works. And in this case, the technical evolution became a threat to the pilot's confidence, a burden that Lewis Hamilton had to pay with humiliating results. Friday was only the notice. The real blow came on Saturday, when Hamilton had the opportunity to claim in the main classification of the Belgium Grand Prix. All foci were placed on him. It was his moment of redemption. The day before he had left him out in AQ1 of the sprint format, but now came the classification that really mattered, the one that defined Sunday's grill. And although the conditions were similar, the mental scenario was completely different. This time I could not fail. And yet, he failed. In his first attempt in Q1, Hamilton marked a decent time, although clearly not brilliant. In Spa, every thousandth, and he knew that he had to take a clean second round to ensure his passage to the next round. He went on track with new tires, seeking to find that extra confidence and adhesion. The first sectors were promising. His speed in the Kemmel line was competitive, the passage through Eau Rouge Radolin, impeccable. But it was upon reaching Curve 4, also known as Les Combes, when everything crumbled. A slight track departure, almost imperceptible to the naked eye, changed the course of its classification. The cameras captured how the wheels on the left side of the SF25 stepped beyond the allowed edge of the circuit. An infraction of track limits that, according to the current regulation, automatically invalidated its return. And with that, any possibility of improving your previous registration disappeared. Hamilton was eliminated, again in Q1, for the second consecutive day, with a Ferrari car, in Spa. The most dramatic thing was not the mistake itself, but what it represented. After getting out of the car, Hamilton did not hide his frustration. He described his performance as very, very poor. He apologized for the team and accepted the blame. But it is also true that their words were loaded with something deeper, a feeling of helplessness. Because for a pilot like him, accustomed to fighting for poles and victories, looking out in Q1 is a humiliation that goes beyond sports. It is a questioning of its own capacity, to its validity, to his decision to have chosen Ferrari as a new home. And it wasn't just a bad day for him. It was a reflection of a broader problem. The SF25 is still not a balanced car in classification. The improvements that Ferrari brought to Belgium seemed more designed for career conditions than for pure performance on a return. And that strategic lag ended up paying his most experienced pilot. While teams like McLaren optimize their cars to exploit each circuit from the first minute, Ferrari continues to run behind the circumstances, reacting more than anticipating. The elimination of Hamilton on Saturday's Q1 sealed a weekend that will be difficult to erase. But beyond the result, a worrying pattern left exposed. Neither the car is ready to fight consistently in the upper part, nor Hamilton has finished finding the confidence and understanding he needs with his machine. A technical and emotional abyss that, if it does not close soon, could turn its passage through Ferrari into one of the greatest disappointments of his career. The classification of the 2025 Belgium Grand Prix left an indelible mark not only on the timesheet, but in the emotional and technical trajectory of Lewis Hamilton in Ferrari. It was not simply a bad day, not even a bad weekend. It was the reflection of an adaptation that is far from completing, of a sports marriage that still does not find its natural rhythm. What happened in SPA cannot be understood as an isolated incident. It was a raw synthesis of everything that is not working, from the technical management of the team to the broken trust of a pilot who, for the first time, does not have all the answers. This episode in Belgium marks a before and after. Hamilton is not used to staying out in Q1, much less in 2 consecutive sessions, and much less without an obvious external cause such as rain or a clear mechanical failure. Here, what failed was the connection between pilot and machine. That symbiosis that made it one of the greatest of all time. Without it, even the best talent can be neutralized by a capricious, unstable, and unreliable car. For Hamilton, Spa could have been just one more obstacle in a long season. But it may also have been a turning point, because there is something that can no longer ignore. The fight is not just against its rivals. It is also against your own car.